You know how in those old high school physics demonstrations, they spin a heavy metal top?
Oh, yeah, like a gyroscope.
Right, exactly. And while it's spinning really fast, it sort of defies gravity. Like it stands perfectly upright, completely stable, almost like magic.
Right, until it doesn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
The second friction slows it down, even a tiny bit, it starts to wobble. And once that wobble starts, well, gravity always wins.
That is a very ominous way to start our deep dive today.
Well, it fits, right? Because for the last few years, the AI industry has been spinning so incredibly fast that it really seemed to defy the laws of business physics.
You really did.
But today, we are looking at the wobble. We're diving into Aaron Rose's latest Tech Reader AI Digest to unpack a single, highly consequential date in tech history, Tuesday, April 28th, 2026.
Yeah, and this digest is a perfect snapshot of that wobble. When you look at these seemingly disconnected events happening on this specific Tuesday, a really profound structural shift reveals itself.
Definitely. I mean, we've got sources covering quite the spread today.
We really do. We are looking at a courtroom drama in Oakland, a massive leak to the financial press, a sudden shift in product strategy, and a pricing update for developers.
Which, on the surface, look like totally separate news items.
Exactly. But beneath the surface, they are symptoms of the exact same phenomenon. Basically, the world's most famous AI company, OpenAI, finding itself caught in a three-front war.
A three-front war. Okay, break that down for us.
Well, they are battling over their past in federal court, fighting for their present financial reality on Wall Street, and desperately maneuvering for their strategic future against fierce rivals.
All right, let's jump straight into the first front of this war, which is the courtroom split screen.
Yeah, this is fascinating.
So we're in a federal courtroom in Oakland for the opening statements of the OpenAI trial. And the very first witness called to the stand is Elon Musk.
The very first witness.
Right. And he is claiming he essentially birthed the company. He's testifying that, he came up with the idea, he came up with the name, he provided the initial funding, and he actively recruited the key personnel.
Yeah, specifically pointing to Ilya Sutskever.
Exactly. So the jury is basically being asked to weigh two radically different interpretations of history here.
Right. And Musk's attorney, Stephen Mullo, delivered an incredibly blunt opening argument. I mean, he stood before the jury and stated that the defendants in this case, quote, stole a charity.
Stole a charity. Wow. That is aggressive.
It is, and Mullo anchors this entire premise on the 2015 founding charter, which was actually entered into evidence. The language in that document is, it's very explicit.
Right, because it states the organization's intent was to create open source technology for the public benefit.
Exactly. And that it was not organized for the private gain of any person.
Yeah.
So the core of Mullo's argument is that the massive 2022 commercial partnership with Microsoft was a fundamental violation of those founding commitments.
But then you have OpenAI's lawyer, William Savitt, who paints a completely different picture for the jury.
Oh, completely different.
Yeah, he argues that Musk isn't some noble crusader for the public good. Savitt told the jurors that Musk used his funding promises to bully the founding members.
Because he wanted control.
Right. Savitt claims Musk's actual endgame was to take over OpenAI entirely, merge it with Tesla, and use it as a weapon to beat Google.
Which totally transforms the narrative. Suddenly, it's not a battle over human ethics, it's a battle over billionaire egos.
Exactly. And what makes this so wild is the documentary evidence from the digest.
Yeah.
I mean, we aren't relying on decade-old memories here.
No, the receipts are out there. Two specific pieces of evidence carry immense weight here. First, there's the Scott memo.
Right.
But the most damaging one is a handwritten diary entry from Greg Brockman, dated 2017. Brockman literally wrote that converting to a for-profit model without Musk's knowledge would be, quote, a lie and, quote, pretty morally bankrupt.
Oh, wow. Hearing a diary entry read aloud in federal court 9 years after you wrote it is just wild.
It's totally devastating. It undercuts the defense because it proves that even internally, the shift away from the nonprofit ideal was causing deep moral apprehension.
Right. Among the very people executing the pivot. And the visual of this particular Tuesday is just bizarre to me.
The split screen you mentioned.
Yeah, the split screen. On one side of the country, you have Elon Musk on a witness stand in Oakland fighting for the quote-unquote soul of the charity.
Right.
While on the other side, the defendant, Sam Altman, is making a virtual appearance at an Amazon Web Services event, literally selling corporate cloud services.
The optics are staggering.
They really are. But I actually wanted to push back on Musk's narrative here for a second.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because I was looking through his testimony, And he explicitly stated that he actually supported a small adjunct for-profit wing.
He did say that.
Right. So if you are standing in a federal courtroom claiming that a charity was stolen, and you are acting as the purest defender of open source technology, how do you simultaneously admit that a little bit of profit was totally fine with you?
That's a great question.
Doesn't that just completely shatter his entire moral high ground?
Well, Musk's specific phrasing on the stand addresses that exact tension. He testified that a small for-profit arm was acceptable to pay for server costs as long as it wasn't the tail wagging the dog.
The tail wagging the dog.
Right. In his view, generating some localized revenue to just, keep the lights on is functionally different from transforming the entire core mission of the entity to serve the financial interests of a massive corporate partner like Microsoft.
I see.
And the reason this semantic debate matters so much right now extends far beyond who wins this specific lawsuit. We have to remember, OpenAI is barreling toward a massive Q4 initial public offering.
Right. An IPO with an expected valuation of $852 billion.
Exactly. When a company files for an IPO at that unprecedented scale, institutional investors scrutinize foundational stability.
Yeah, they want a sure thing.
Right. So every document entered into evidence in Oakland, the Brockman diary, the founding emails, all of that becomes permanent public history. Having your origin story aggressively litigated as a stolen charity introduces severe legal and structural risk.
Right at the exact moment you're asking Wall Street to hand you nearly $1 trillion.
Precisely.
Which transitions us perfectly to the second front of this war.
The financial reality check.
Yeah. Because Musk's lawsuit is trying to prove OpenAI abandoned its soul for a $1 trillion payday. But the irony is, right outside that Oakland courtroom, Wall Street is starting to realize that $1 trillion payday might be a mathematical impossibility.
The wobble is getting worse.
It really is. While Musk is on the stand, the Wall Street Journal drops this bombshell investigative report that brutally questions the company's present financial reality.
The hard numbers in the WSJ report illustrate the wobble perfectly. I mean, OpenAI missed massive internal milestones.
Yeah, they had an internal projection to hit 1 billion weekly active ChatGPT users by the end of the year, and they just missed it.
They missed their annual revenue targets, too. The competitive landscape shifted dramatically late in the year. Google's Gemini model really surged in capability.
And Anthropic aggressively ate into OpenAI's enterprise and coding market share.
Exactly. Plus, the report notes actual subscriber defection rates.
Wait, like users actively canceling their $20 subscriptions?
Yes, active cancellations. If consumer growth is stalling and users are defecting to Gemini and Anthropic, that creates immediate internal friction.
And the digest highlights a severe escalating clash internally, specifically between CEO Sam Altman and CFO Sarah Friar.
Yeah, this is a major conflict. Friar is warning colleagues that this slowing revenue growth could leave them fundamentally unable to honor future computing contracts.
She is raising serious doubts about whether the company is actually ready to go public on Altman's preferred schedule at that massive $852 billion valuation.
And you have to understand, computing contracts in the AI space are completely different from traditional software overhead.
How so?
Well, when a normal software company scales back, they just spin down a few Amazon cloud instances, right? But when an AI giant signs a computing contract, they are committing to physical data centers.
Oh, right.
Dedicated power grids, specialized hardware that cost billions of dollars and take years to construct.
That's a huge commitment. And OpenAI and Sarah Friar pushed back hard on this WSJ reporting, by the way. They released a statement calling the rumors of division ridiculous.
Right, claiming they're totally aligned on buying as much compute as they can.
Yeah, and working hard on it together every day.
Yeah.
But if I'm looking at flattening demand curves, buying absolutely unlimited physical compute seems reckless.
It does.
It's like pouring billions of dollars into pouring concrete for a massive new metropolis in the desert, even as the population data shows everyone is actually moving away. Why would a pragmatic CFO ever sign off on unconstrained spending when the growth is slowing?
Well, analysts are pointing to a concept called the revenue ceiling to explain this exact panic.
The revenue ceiling.
Yeah. The entire Silicon Valley investment thesis over the last few years relied on the assumption of infinite exponential growth. The hypothesis was that generative AI consumer tools would scale endlessly until nearly every knowledge worker on Earth was paying $20 a month.
Right.
But the revenue ceiling suggests that the total addressable market of people who actually need to use a chatbot every single day is fundamentally capped. And we might have already found most of those users.
Oh, wow. So if a company hits a revenue ceiling before reaching the massive scale required to justify the billions spent on physical infrastructure,
The underlying business model collapses.
and when that math breaks, it doesn't just hit OpenAI, it hits the companies selling them the hardware.
Oh, absolutely. The immediate market fallout from the WSJ report is being called the OpenAI chill.
The OpenAI chill.
Yeah. When investors realized the infinite spending might have a cap, it dragged down the entire hardware ecosystem. NVIDIA, which had just hit a $5.008 trillion valuation the previous week, became the worst performing stock in the Magnificent Seven. CoreWeave dropped 5.4%. Oracle dropped 5.5%. AMD and Broadcom fell roughly 4%. The entire semiconductor boom is predicated on OpenAI and its rivals never hitting the brakes on data center expansion.
So if consumer growth is hitting a wall and those hardware bills are still coming due, the company needs a new lifeline.
They desperately need a pivot.
Right. They have to pivot away from everyday consumers and go after the enterprise businesses, the giant corporations with deep, predictable budgets.
But there's a huge problem there. Anthropic already owns that space.
Exactly. So OpenAI is suddenly being forced to rewrite their entire product strategy to look exactly like the competitor they used to mock.
Yeah, the Digest highlights a really sharp piece by Matteo Wong in The Atlantic that tracks this explicit pattern.
He outlines how OpenAI is basically mimicking Anthropic's roadmap step by step.
The sequence is undeniable. Anthropic launched a coding tool called Claude Code. Months later, OpenAI updated Codex to match it.
Then Anthropic announced their Claude Mythos preview.
And suddenly, OpenAI shared a highly restricted GPT 5.4 cyber designed specifically for trusted cybersecurity users.
Anthropic updated Claude's famous Constitution, the document governing its AI behavior.
And OpenAI immediately launched an equivalent safety document.
It's like OpenAI built this massive, flashy fast food franchise with ChatGPT. They got hundreds of millions of people to try the $20 burgers.
Great analogy.
Thanks. But they just realized that selling fast food won't cover the multi-billion-dollar electric bills for their data centers. To survive, they have to start catering massive, multi-year corporate banquets.
And Anthropic already has all the banquet halls booked.
Exactly. They have no choice but to copy the banquet menu.
Yeah,
But why take the public relations hit? I mean, OpenAI started the generative AI boom. They have hundreds of millions of users.
they did.
And they used to dismiss Anthropic as fear-based and overly cautious. Why risk the embarrassment of the press calling them Anthropic's little brother?
Well, because despite the perception of AI as a magical, world-altering technology, tech companies still have to survive within the fundamental business model realities of Silicon Valley.
Right.
There are only two proven ways to make trillions of dollars in tech selling ads or selling enterprise tools. OpenAI initially tried to invent a third category, a massive consumer subscription behemoth.
But as the revenue ceiling demonstrates, consumer churn is high and growth is capping out.
Exactly. Anthropic never chased the consumer hype. They stayed in their lane from day one, building highly secure, highly reliable, somewhat boring tools for giant enterprise businesses.
And enterprise contracts mean predictable revenue.
Multi-year predictability. Sam Altman needs that stable enterprise revenue to justify the IPO valuation to institutional investors.
And to pay for the unconstrained physical data center expansion.
Right. He has to swallow his pride and follow Anthropic's lead because enterprise revenue is the only mechanism large enough to sustain the company's burn rate.
Man, so this immense pressure, the lawsuits threatening the foundation, the billions in physical server costs, the desperate scramble for enterprise cash, all of that gravity eventually rolls downhill.
It always does.
And it lands squarely on the everyday people actually building with these tools. Which brings us to the final front, the GitHub Copilot pricing change hitting on June 1st, 2026.
This is a massive shift for developers.
It really is. For anyone who writes code, Copilot has been the backbone of the AI coding revolution. But according to the Digest's Quick Hits section, the free ride is ending.
Yeah, all Copilot plans are moving to usage-based billing.
And that fundamentally alters how developers interact with AI. The new metric establishes that one AI credit equals exactly 1 cent, 0.01 USD.
And GitHub is entirely retiring their annual plans. So previously, developers could lock in a predictable cost for the entire year. That's gone.
Furthermore, they are eliminating the fallback feature, which historically allowed developers to keep coding on a slower, less advanced model once they ran out of their premium credits.
Right, so the backlash from the developer community has been massive. The digest notes one FAQ submission where a developer explicitly asked, quote, "This just wiped GitHub's value moat. Why should I stay?"
Now let's look at the mechanics of why they are so angry. We are talking about heavy agentic users here.
Yes, the power users.
Right. If I'm a developer running AI agents, meaning I'm not just asking a chatbot one question, but I'm setting up an autonomous AI worker to write code, test it for errors, rewrite it, and run in an autonomous loop for hours. I am the one proving how revolutionary and powerful this tool actually is.
Absolutely.
So if these heavy users are the ones demonstrating the true value of the product, why on earth would GitHub risk alienating them by suddenly charging them per action? Aren't they driving away their best customers?
To understand why GitHub is willing to alienate them, we have to look at what an agentic user actually costs the company.
Okay, break that down.
An AI agent running an autonomous loop isn't just a single database query. It is thousands of continuous, complex requests firing constantly in the background. Each one of those requests requires server processing power,
Right.
electricity, water for data center cooling. Heavy agentic users are burning through astronomical amounts of physical resources.
And during the growth phase of the AI boom, tech giants were willing to subsidize those massive physical costs just to get developers addicted to the workflow.
Exactly. They absorb the losses to build market share.
But now the bill is due.
Now the bill is due. Now that growth is slowing and CFOs are demanding a clear path to profitability ahead of IPOs, the era of subsidized AI exploration just has to end.
Wow.
GitHub isn't punishing their best users. They are finally forcing their heaviest users to pay the actual physical cost of the resources they are burning.
Though they are offering a temporary Band-Aid to smooth the transition, right?
Yeah, $30 monthly AI credit bonus for business users and $70 for enterprise users through August.
But that is just a buffer.
Exactly. The reality is the shift from a subsidized playground to a strict utility model. Just like you pay for the exact amount of water and electricity your house uses, developers will now pay for the exact amount of compute their AI agents consume.
It's incredible to step back and look at all of this together. April 28th, 2026 really is the pivot point.
It's the day the narrative of the entire industry shifts.
Yeah. When you connect all these sources, the theme is identical. Whether you are an enterprise developer tracking your GitHub credits penny by penny, or you're an institutional investor watching Microsoft's earnings report drop tomorrow, knowing their stock is already down 12% for the year.
The limitless zero-gravity optimism of the AI hype cycle is violently colliding with the hard, unforgiving realities of law, physics, and finance.
The wobble is officially here.
It is, and it forces us to confront a lingering, critical question.
Let's hear it.
We are watching the company that launched the entire generative AI era rely on copycat product strategies, fight its own founders in federal court, and struggle against a revenue ceiling just to justify its massive server costs.
Right.
If the pioneer of this technology is facing these structural limits, what happens to the global tech economy? If the trillion-dollar physical infrastructure being built right now is preparing for a future scale that simply never arrives?
That is a terrifying question for the market, and definitely something for all of you listening to chew on as you watch the headlines this week.
Definitely.
Keep questioning those headlines, keep looking for the wobble, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.